It's My Nerd World, a Star Wars Plus show, and on this week's episode, my thoughts and commentary on Episode 6 of Ahsoka, Far, Far Away, and why everybody is missing a key part or misplacing their speculation over one of the biggest questions left in this episode. It's very strange to me. I will explain. Thank you so much for checking out the show. As always, like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, and of course, subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast platform you are enjoying the show on. Now, let's go ahead and do it for this week.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing. Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
My Nerd World.
Welcome to it, a Star Wars Plus show. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Again, thank you so much for checking out the episode. And if you want to support My Nerd World, you can do so if you like to read and want to read more sci-fi of the space opera, sci-fi adventure variety, and check out my science fiction series, EMBARK, available on Amazon or mynerdworld.net. Just search for EMBARK, Jon, Jon Justice, and you will find all 7 books in the series, audiobook, ebook, Kindle Unlimited, hardcover, and paperback as well. All right, let's get into this week's episode. I'll give an overview of the episode, much like I did last week. Loved it. Don't think it was my favorite, but still absolutely loved it for a lot of different reasons. World building taking place. Really dug what we saw on Paradia. And what we now have in terms of the story coming together on where we're leading in these last 2 episodes. I want to address one thing out of the gate, however.
This is not going to go the way you think.
I've had a chance to listen to a lot of commentary around Tuesday's episode over the course of the past few days, and all of the speculation surrounding what Baylan Skoll is being drawn to, in my opinion, is completely misplaced. And I don't think I've heard anybody yet even go where I'm going to go on this, and it seems like the most obvious answer. So Baylan Skoll has motivations beyond what's happening with Thrawn. That's been clear throughout all of the episodes. Shin Hati is along for the ride with him, and obviously very special to Baylan. In this episode 6, it became more clear that his motivations are not what Palpatine's motivations are. Aren't what Thrawn's motivations are. And in my opinion, he's going to be sort of a third entity or group trying to obtain a certain goal. So you have the good guys trying to stop Thrawn. You have Thrawn trying to get back to the other galaxy to wage his war, and I believe you're going to have Baylan teaming up with the Nomads, as he said in this episode when he saw them and Shin Hati noticed them. He said that, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What I think Baylan wants to get at is what the Night Sisters have in terms of power for bringing in the threat and power that he's been sensing. So, if that all sounds confusing, I'll make it real simple here in just a moment. First off, I want to dispense with one question that hasn't been answered yet, in my opinion. Does Thrawn know that Palpatine is dead? I'm assuming that Thrawn knows Palpatine is dead. He and the Night Sisters have obviously been there on Paradia. We don't know what their situation is in this other galaxy, but we know that obviously Thrawn hasn't been able to get back to the other galaxy, and he needed Morgan Elsbeth to come and find him. I called it on the hyperspace ring, by the way. That's what's going to happen, is the Star Destroyer is going to get connected to that hyperspace ring, and they're going to be on their way back to galaxy number 1, away from galaxy number 2, where they are currently. Just naming them 1 and 2 for the sake of ease. So the Night Sisters, their ability to communicate across the stars with Morgan Elsbeth, they're leaning into the dark side. I have to assume that they're aware and Thrawn's aware that Palpatine is dead. The speculation that I've heard from everybody is Baylan Skoll being attracted to this other force. What is it? What is this other power that he's trying to get? And everybody's been pointing in all these different directions of something that we haven't seen yet. I've heard some people mention the Yuuzhan Vong. That, of course, comes from Legends. We haven't seen that introduced in the new canon at all. Other individuals theorizing that perhaps this is a larger threat beyond what we've seen so far that could be the bigger threat once we get past the sequel trilogy. And I think the obvious answer is that what Baylan Skoll is feeling is Palpatine not being dead. I think the Night Sisters think he's dead. I think Baylan knows that Palps died, but he's sensing something else out there even stronger. And what I think is that Palpatine cheated death. I've heard many comments that people are saying they wished that this was the sequel trilogy. Okay. No, I don't. I love the sequel trilogy. I understand where that desire comes from. When you begin to total up the number of hours for the Ahsoka series, I actually think we end up with as much content, if not a little bit more, than what we get in all 3 of the sequel trilogy films. But this is not the replacement for the sequel trilogy. It's not apart from the sequel trilogy. And a long time ago, Dave Filoni himself said that Ahsoka was going to fill in some of the gaps leading to the First Order. I think Baylan senses, not aware, that Palpatine's not dead, and that's the power that he's trying to get. He keeps talking about this cycle of the Empire, New Republic, and Empire, and going back and forth, and he wants that all to end. I think he's sensing that Palps can go and do that, and that's what's leading us to the sequel trilogy, the First Order leading to the Final Order when he finally puts an end to all of it. That makes the absolute most sense to me. To invite some other big bad at this point in the game, prior to the sequel trilogy, that they have to suddenly dispense with, and then we see Palpatine coming back along with Snoke, that doesn't... It could be Snoke a part of this as well. We know that they were supposed to be out in the unknown regions, and perhaps that's what he's sensing, is actually Snoke, which we know was just an extension of Palpatine, while Palpatine was trying to bring himself back up to full strength. Because the commentary that I've heard from other people is not bringing in what we've seen in The Mandalorian. And what we've seen in The Mandalorian is a lot of what? Cloning. Now, you had Moff Gideon and his own motivations, but we also know that there is quite a bit of speculation that they've been trying to develop this most likely to bring Palpatine back from the dead. So my thought moving forward is that we're going to see this 3-pronged conflict going on. We're probably going to have a war that breaks out in Episode 7 on Paradia. Obviously on a smaller scale, because Ahsoka's not going to have an army to fight against them. I don't think we have enough hermit crab people in the Hody. That's what they call the hermit crab people. I'm calling them hermit crab people. I don't think we have enough of them to wage war against the undead stormtroopers. And yes, they're undead. I'll get to that in a moment as well. And then also you're going to have this other faction of Baylan Skoll and these nomads that are all going to be tussling as well. So I think we're going to see some type of battle being waged in episode 7, and then the finale is going to be Thrawn having traveled with the giant hyperspace ring and the Chimera to Galaxy number 1. From what happens there, I don't know, but I imagine we're going to see something with the New Republic. We'll see Hera and the Ghost get involved, and perhaps we even see an appearance of Zeb, since we haven't seen him the entire series. We're supposed to get an Ahsoka season 2, so I don't know if they're going to end this on a cliffhanger or not, but it makes all the sense in the world to me at the moment that what we've seen in this episode, the bringing in of the Night Sisters, the undead Night Troopers, which is what they're called in the subtitles, the conversation with Thrawn and the Night Sisters basically saying he's going to need help, dark magic, those caskets of cargo they were loading on to the Supremacy from the catacombs, those are undead somethings. And we're going to see the fantasy element, even more so than we've seen so far, which has always been a part of Star Wars, really make an appearance. If you're familiar with Clone Wars, you know the Night Sisters, man, it's all about that dark magic. I think that's what Baylan wants. I think Baylan senses Palpatine needs to come back. He's going to be the one to ultimately end all of this. What he is really feeling is what ends up occurring in The Rise of Skywalker. That makes sense from a storytelling standpoint. That makes sense from a franchise standpoint. What doesn't make sense, in my opinion, from a franchise standpoint, is to suddenly have some other big bad entity out there that's a part of all of this that Baylan Skoll is connecting himself to, that suddenly gets introduced in this series alone and then gets defeated, and then we're back to Snoke and Palpatine in the sequel trilogy. No, this is all establishing the lead up to why the First Order came into being in the first place. When the Chimera arrived in the episode and they first showed all of the undead stormtroopers in the background, I actually thought from a distance they looked like First Order stormtroopers, and it wasn't until you get up close that you see that they use that, Kintsugi? Method of rebuilding their armor, much in the same way that who did? Kylo Ren and his mask in The Rise of Skywalker. But as I mentioned, all the speculation has been apart from that. Nobody is talking about that he's sensing Palpatine in all this, and that, again, seems like so obvious. I'm almost like, I've almost been stunned listening to the commentary that nobody else has been saying that other than me. And if you've heard it on other commentary, please point me in that direction, because I want to hear those views as well. I would really appreciate it. You can email me, thejonjustice, JON@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
All right, so let's just go ahead and get through this episode, talk a little bit about this episode, and it's been fantastic storytelling. It really has just rekindled my love of Star Wars, and Dave Filoni is the man. He's doing a fantastic job. So we kick off with Ahsoka on the way, having this wonderful conversation with Hu Yang, potentially swapping stories together to where Ahsoka wants to hear one, and we get this, why don't you go and tell it? And he starts off with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I just thought that was, chef's kiss Star Wars, and beautifully written. Hyperspace is different. We get some color action going on. I think this is what happens, we can assume, when you're traveling with space whales through hyperspace. We get the arrival of Morgan Elsbeth and the hyperspace ring, and then we get the backstory from Baylan Skoll about these travel lanes and how this is where the Purrgil go to die. The imagery and the effects are absolutely fantastic. It is TV show Disney Plus level. It's not quite up to the quality of Andor, but I don't care. It's not taking it away from me at all. And Dave Filoni has done a spectacular job with the volume in all of this. Now, we've got Sabine back. Probably my favorite character of the series so far. Natasha is doing a fantastic job with her, and I find her probably the most compelling in her journey in all of this. I can't wait to see where it goes, and if they kill her off, I'm going to be so ticked off. the Arrival and then the Night Sisters, having spent so much time with them in the Clone Wars, and even before that, knowing that their original design was based off of Doug Chiang, the artist for Lucasfilm, and his original designs for Darth Maul, bringing them into real life, they nailed the look of the three Night Sisters, modulating the voice, the dark magic, the way that they went and captured Sabine. I thought it was interesting how they sensed and in this discussed the Jedi on Sabine. Like, if I was Sabine, I would have been it would have been motivating for me wanting to tap into the Force to know that these Night Sisters sensed Jedi on her. We get the Sabine Force fake out before the Chimera arrives. I think by the end of the series, we'll see Sabine use some type of Force, and Ezra is going to be the one who ends up unlocking it. The arrival of the Chimera and the decision to have the Star Destroyer lower down onto the temple to create this hall between the bay of the Star Destroyer and the top of this temple, I thought was a really brilliant move. It created this really cool set piece and dynamic. The introduction of the stormtroopers that have been pieced together. In my opinion, they're undead. They're wrapped in scarlet of the Night Sisters. That's got to be Night Sister magic. Their armor has been pieced back together. The use of the gold and that motif throughout all of what we've seen in this, including Enoch, his right-hand stormtrooper in his army. I was talking with my wife about this and how it's got the molded gold face, and it's like, why would that happen? I was like, well, I think these stormtroopers probably all bit the dust on their travels from Lothal until they ended up at Paradia. My guess is that the Night Sisters resurrected them and are using the scarlet wrapping and used their magic and tools to go and rebuild their outfits like that Japanese tradition, and that this particular stormtrooper decided to, instead of recreating the face mask of a typical stormtrooper helmet, did a more traditional sort of sculpt of his face. The Star Destroyer itself had been pieced together using gold. I just think the imagery is spectacular, and I love the fact that we're bringing the fantasy element back into all of this. I've talked about it before. That's the one thing with the Mandalorian that I love so much, and while we do have the mythology of the Mandalorian, Ahsoka really has brought back that fantasy element that's always been in Star Wars and was certainly there in the original trilogy, and done well in the sequel trilogy. I would say less so with the prequels, but I really love where Dave Filoni is embracing this with these witches and these undead troopers. Again, the cargo of the dead, what's inside of them? Past Sith, past Jedi, past Night Sisters. We've seen the resurrection of Night Sisters before. The commentary between Thrawn and Morgan Elsbeth, that he's got his disdain for the Jedi. She's trying to convince him that Ahsoka has died, and he's like, resurrection, the dark side, the Jedi, these things are not past both factions in all of this. And then speaking of the fantasy element of it, we go on Sabine's journey. She's got this cool Paradia wolf that's got this attitude. It's mean at first, but then ends up kind of liking her, and we get this comedic moment between the two of them before the meeting of the hermit crab people. And, of course, Ezra's return once they arrive to the village. And I can't wait to see more of this actor playing Ezra. Could you have picked another individual, one, who looks like Ezra, and two, sounds just like Ezra? And I think that Ezra is going to be very key, again, to unlocking Sabine's Force abilities. I did find it a little strange with their reintroduction. It landed better with me the second time around, like when they saw each other. In my mind, my headcanon had that playing out differently, more of sort of an immediate excitement and embrace rather than a cagey sort of questioning back and forth. Also, this idea that Sabine would not immediately tell him, or Ezra wouldn't be immediately almost demanding, hey, how did you get here? let's talk about that later. It's like, really? You're going to wait on something like that? I think that was a little wonky. That's my only complaint. Another key moment in the episode, beyond what I mentioned, Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, and I think that these individuals, I think Shin is one where she could go either way at this point in time, depending on, her allegiances. I think that she's very, I don't want to say conflicted. I think she's loyal to Baylan Skoll, but she's also following his lead and doesn't seem to have any sort of alliance to what's going on with Morgan Elsbeth, the Night Sisters, or Thrawn. But there was an interesting moment of vulnerability when Morgan Elsbeth suggested sending more troopers to go hunt Sabine and Ezra with Baylan and Shin, and Thrawn quietly admitted they don't have the manpower because their resources were depleted. Shortly afterwards, you have Thrawn going to the Night Sisters saying he's going to need some help, some dark magic help, and I'm convinced that that's what's in those containers. The undead troopers are going to be fodder, ultimately, and what Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine are going to have to contend with is whatever is in those particular containers. Now, there's a possibility that a portion of the New Republic arrives on Paradia to try to help them. I think it would be a bit of a stretch that after the lengths that Ahsoka had to go through using the Purrgil and certainly having to build a hyperspace ring, that would happen. So I go back to my original speculation that this episode coming up next week is going to be a battle that takes place on Paradia, but ultimately Thrawn's going to connect the Chimera to the hyperspace ring and zip right on out of there. And then the final episode will take back in the galaxy that we've all grown accustomed to. Where it happens after that, I really have no idea. I do think that there will be a reveal at the end, that this is all leading to Palp's return, and that's what the story is ultimately about. That Thrawn is coming back for his own personal gain, but it's Baylan Skoll that senses there's another threat out there they need to get attached to. Now, it could be they're all in on it as well, and that Baylan's the one that ends up letting Thrawn know, or the Night Sisters know, that Palpatine isn't dead either. But Baylan Skoll's commentary around the history repeating of the Empire, New Republic going over, and him wanting to see an end to that. Sometimes you have to destroy to rebuild. We've seen that event almost take place in The Rise of Skywalker. So, again, storytelling-wise and franchise-wise, it makes sense that Baylan Skoll is sensing what a resurrected Palpatine could accomplish with the Sith Eternal. But what say you in all of this? You think I'm right? Have you heard some other commentary? You agree with it? I really would be interested to know your thoughts. Email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Or, again, leave a comment on YouTube if you happen to be watching there. Or I'm going with my newer email address, by the way, so the Jon Justice. But you can email me at talkshownerd@gmail.com or thejonjustice@gmail.com.
Something inside me has always been there.
It has, Ray, but this is what I really wanted to hear.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, your listener feedback this week. Rome Ed writes, how about that Ahsoka episode? Loved it. I know Ahsoka wasn't much in this episode, but I didn't miss her. Not because I don't like her, but because I was so invested in this episode that I've completely forgot that this is an Ahsoka show. I feel exactly the same way. I think the power of the show is within its characters. We didn't get Sabine at all in the last episode, but I didn't miss her because of everything going on. And I agree, we didn't get Ahsoka hardly at all in this episode, but I didn't miss her because there was so much going on. Nor did we didn't get any Hera either, and I love all three of these characters, and I think it really, again, speaks to the power of these characters. Now, I do wonder that if we've now received a full Ahsoka episode and almost a full Sabine episode, if we may be getting a Hera-intensive episode. Now, that could have been the one that was with Ahsoka in Episode 5. I do think they will be returning back to the other galaxy, and that's going to play a part, because they made too much of the New Republic being ticked off at Hera, Princess Leia, Organa, only being able to cover her for so long, and the New Republic being sent to go get them, to not address that later and to make the New Republic aware that there is a threat growing. And like I said, it was said a long time ago that Ahsoka was going to be filling into the stories of how the First Order came into power. Getting back to Rome's email, I was smiling the entire time. The Night Sisters, Dathomir, etc. When that Star Destroyer showed up, I got goosebumps. Wait, I hope you watched the episode already. Otherwise, I've written this without a spoiler warning. No, it's okay, Ed. I did. Thanks anyway. Enjoy your day. Looking forward to the podcast. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. All right. JR writes, love your takes. Question eventually. I don't remember from Clones or other Ahsoka or Green Hot Girl from Jabba's Dungeon or Green Grown Up Gal in general. Can't remember her name at the moment. Do the ladies with unusual hair, skin, skull caps, long ears have the ability to move them like appendages? Like with bones inside muscles or cartilage? I don't believe that's the case. I don't think they can. I generally suspend my disbelief on sci-fi. Just curious your takes in the canon. What do those things do? Thanks for all you do. Enjoyer, JR. And I can't remember the name of them right now. There's a name for those Lekus. I know they're Lekus for Ahsoka. I don't know if it's the same for Twi'leks. I don't think they have muscles where they can be moved like appendages. I think they're just a part of their body. Think of them as very long tubular ears. I don't think I've said tubular since it was used to describe something cool in the 80s. Now I feel old. But your email was totally tubular. I've never seen them move with muscles there, JR, but thank you. Michael E. Tennant writes, all I know is that now I need an actual movie with Hayden Christensen and young Ahsoka during the Clone Wars. I don't even care what the story is. Yeah, I thought that actress that played young Ahsoka was absolutely fantastic, and I could not agree with you more. All right, that wraps up the episode for this week. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. I hope you'll support my nerd world, and if you like to read, you'll check out my science fiction series, EMBARK. Follow a ragtag squadron of pilots and one reluctant hero on a journey of survival across space as they fight for their future among the stars. 7 books in all. In the series, written for adults, but great for ages 11 plus. You can get EMBARK in ebook, free on Kindle Unlimited if you have that program. Also available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. And I keep forgetting, you can buy the books directly from me as well. And I will autograph them and everything. So I have paperbacks that you can purchase directly from me. All you got to do is email either TalkShowNerd@gmail.com or thejonjustice@gmail.com. If you like your science fiction space opera to be epic, filled with some romance and action, EMBARK is perfect for you. Again, head on over to Amazon, search for Jon, Jon Justice, and EMBARK, or mynerdworld.net. Thank you so much for checking out the episode this week. We'll be back again or another commentary around episode 7 of Ahsoka. Until that time, I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. I'll talk to you then. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.